Hello, welcome back to the NOTCAST, episode 291 today, 23rd of May 2023. As I speak, Depeche Mode are on stage in Stockholm at the Globe Arena, which is a lovely venue, probably at this very second wrapping up Never Let Me Down Again, I suspect. Today I'm going to be talking about Depeche Mode's 15th studio record released on the 24th of March 2023, Memento Mori, or Memento Mori, however it's pronounced, I don't know. I probably should have checked. Mori is an eel, after all. And also the complete lack of tangible actual singles that have been released from the album. Although apparently they're announcing the release of Wagging Tongue tomorrow. Wagging Tongue apparently being the second single, but all they've really teased is a video. So there we have it, Memento Mori. Now I'm going to pick up the Depeche Mode story a couple of years earlier, with starting off with the release on the 29th of January 2021, Martin Gore's fifth major solo release, the third Chimpanzee, a 5-track EP that was recorded during lockdown at Electric Ladyboy Studios, which is also where Depeche Mode do a lot of their work. Apparently, Martin has a very extensive collection of synthesizers, keyboards, and things that go bleep and bloop, which he's bought off eBay over the years, kitted out a shed in his very nice house, and spends a fair chunk of time there just wibbling and whittling with things and machines that go ping, as Monty Python had it. This resulted in the release of the first of the lockdown things, which happened during 2020 and 2021. The third Chimpanzee, a new 5-track EP, features the tracks Howler and Mandrill. Not that necessarily means anything to you. It has a CD release in a card sleeve. Now, I've put the card sleeve in that way, by the way, because it's very difficult to fit the card sleeve into the cover any other way. If you just in this way, it barely fits. Whereas if you put it in sideways, it works. But there's Martin, and following on from VCMG's and the MG album, which I talked about, the third Chimpanzee continues that theme of dark, pulsy, instrumental electronica type stuff. Now, of course, if this was released by a guy that wasn't in Depeche Mode, I think most people would have completely forgotten that this thing came out. It would have been on Bandcamp. It would have sold maybe 35 copies to friends and family, and nobody would ever hear it ever again. In fact, when I saw Depeche Mode recently, I saw them at Antwerp on Saturday night, the 13th live show of the tour, the third in Europe. I did have a feeling that maybe actually Depeche were just playing unreleased Martin Gore instrumental tracks and passing them off as generic bland electronica, and everyone's going, "Oh, brilliant, fantastic, weird," and really it's just another output for unreleased Martin Gore songs. So let's go for the third Chimpanzee. Let's open it up. This is the vinyl version. Features an art print and comes on blue vinyl. The art print is there, a blurry picture of Mr. Martin Gore, in case you had any doubt as to what he looks like. I honestly no idea what he looks like. And here's the relatively standard blue vinyl version. By the way, yesterday was World Goth Day yesterday, and apparently, I'd just like to point out, I should have said this yesterday, I have goth albums on coloured vinyl because black is a colour, and although this is on blue, I don't know what other colours it comes in. There's this ridiculous obsession with different colours of vinyl these days. Getting an actual black vinyl version of an album sometimes seems actually a lot harder and a lot rarer than getting a coloured version of it. Now, the U2 album, Songs of Surrender, as you probably noticed, comes in 17 different colours, of which I have 3. Actually, I only have 2. I have 4 versions of the album. But what I think about it sure, coloured vinyl is nice, but I'm buying music to listen to. I'm not buying an object to hang on a wall or to sit in a collection that never gets looked at. And I'm not certainly going to do a Pokemon and go, well, I've got to get every one of the 17 different Pantone colours of a vinyl release. I'm like, well, I'm buying it for the music. That's what I'm buying it for. Now, some bands and some acts will put out a release, and they will have multiple different variations and deluxe variants. I think Taylor Swift's album has 6 different covers, for example, or a BTS or a K-pop album will have a different cover for every member of the band. And there are at least 7.5 members of every K-pop band, which means that if you really, really love that band, you will buy 7.5 copies of the album just to get every single variant of it. And then that pushes the album further up the charts. The next week, the song drops out of the the top, or the album drops out of the top 100. The lottery winners, who had a #1 album very recently, come from, I think, a place called Latham, I think it is, or is it somewhere, and they're very local, if that makes sense. And their album went in at #1, fell out of the top 100 the next week. The Billie Eilish album again went in at #1, dropped down to number 84 the next week. The concept of a chart is now ridiculous because records don't stay in the chart. They sell all their copies in week 1. And the idea of having something like Thriller or Coming Up or Hysteria that stays in the charts for 2-3 years, consistently shifting copies. Metallica's Black Album apparently sells about 12,000 copies a week still, which is an absurd number. The idea of selling copies regularly over 3 or 4 years while the band tours just seems ridiculous. It doesn't happen. Instead, sell all your copies in week 1 when you've got all your fans that buy all your different colours of vinyl, all your different deluxe, super deluxe, gatefold editions, signed bundles, box sets, and both other versions. And actually, when it gets to that level of format completism, and as you know, I'm a record collector. I have multiple versions of the albums, which I own. I just go, well, actually, I don't need to buy every version of the album, because when there's 17 versions of the album, I just don't need it. I'll buy 2, 3 maybe. And really, I'm buying music. I'm not buying packaging. So if the CD has extra tracks, or if it has, a deluxe expanded edition or something, I'll buy that. For bands that I really, really love, I'll buy the vinyl, I'll buy the CD. If the cassette is bundled in, I'll buy that. I won't go and buy every single vinyl variant unless there's a different track listing, because I think that's important. Because I'm buying music, I'm not buying packaging. So if there's a black vinyl version of the Third Chimpanzee, I have no idea if it exists. I bought the vinyl, I bought the CD, I'm good with that. And this is, by the way, this is quite fun. Really, I think of the Martin Gore solo releases as basically being instrumental Depeche Mode B-sides. Tracks that in the old days would have names like Khalid and Painkiller and Slow Blow and Agent Orange and Memphisto and things like that. Not necessarily important songs, but interesting instrumental excursions, and which ostensibly this is the main songwriter in Depeche Mode, recording songs in the same studio that Depeche Mode use. Sorry, long day. And I haven't really spoken to anybody all day, so apologies for that. These are effectively, in my mind, kind of Depeche Mode-ish, and in another world would have been the B-sides to various singles, but they're not. They're an EP in their own right, The Third Chimpanzee. And The Third Chimpanzee, by the way, takes its name from a book about the primate species. Every track that's on there, Howler, Mandrill, Capuchin, Vervet, and Howler's End, are named after species, I think, of primates. And they are also, the cover art, by the way, is done by a chimpanzee painter. So that's like a chimp that lives in a zoo that they've taught to paint. This is by one called Pockets Warhol, whoever he is. And there was a very limited edition that came in a different colour vinyl. That's not a surprise, is it? And had an art print that came with it. It takes its name, The Third Chimpanzee, from a book of the same name about the human similarity to primates, about the fact that humans are maybe 98% DNA the same as chimpanzees and gorillas and all that type of stuff, and how we are broadly extremely similar to those animals. Each of the tracks is broadly okay and serviceable, unexceptional, unexciting, Instead of getting any singles from this, we also got the third Chimpanzee remix, the 10-track remix CD featuring remixes of every track off the album. The CD comes in a trifold sleeve there with a nice picture of Martin and a CD inside the cardboard box. I've noticed actually they've stopped doing jewel cases. They now just do cardboard fold-out sleeves, which means that obviously if you drop them, they don't smash. But at the same point, if you damage them, you can't just replace the jewel box. And replacing the jewel box is one of the great skills in life. The third Chimpanzee remix also got a double vinyl release. This is a limited edition on transparent orange and transparent blue with a download code. There was a version that came in a slightly different colour that I think you could buy from the Mute store that featured an art print of the cover, limited to 400 copies. It was expensive and I decided not to buy it instead. So you get this lovely shade of transparent orange, that's the colour, and a lovely shade of transparent blue, that's a colour too. Yeah, the remixes are pretty good. They're not amazing, but they are certainly, I think, far more interesting and far more creative than the other solo release by a member of Depeche Mode at this point in time. And that came out in late 2021. On the 12th of November 2021, Dave Gahan released, I think, maybe his 5th solo LP with Soul Savers as his backing band. This was called Imposter, and this is a series of cover versions. And as I've said before, and I've been scathing about it, a cover versions album is the last gasp of the creatively bankrupt. I don't understand why you're going to do cover versions albums. If you're going to do covers albums, choose interesting songs that people haven't heard, make those arrangements your own, make those songs sound like they're songs that belong to you that happen to have been written by other people. Basically, if your cover version isn't as good as Johnny Cash's Hurt or Pet Shop Boys Always on My Mind, don't fucking bother. And unfortunately, Imposter is an album that I only bought at this last month, even though it's been out at this point for 16 months, 17 months, on the grounds that I couldn't be bothered to buy it. I wanted it to hit a certain price point. I didn't buy the vinyl. I'm not invested in it. I bought it because I feel like I ought to own it, as opposed to buying it because I think I'm going to enjoy it. I heard it. I bought tickets for the show at Westminster Hall, which I couldn't get to because I had COVID in December 2021, £25 tickets. But I listened to it and I was just like, this is not good. I mean, these are, it's fair to say, unexceptional songs. They clearly have a meaning to Dave Gahan, but the arrangements of the songs and the presentation of them and the delivery of the songs is turgid, is boring, it is pedestrian. The instrumentation is uninteresting. The songs are very well known. There's no character in that song. So listening to his version of Bob Dylan's Not Dark Yet, for example, it doesn't feel like you're listening to a Bob Dylan song. It feels like you're listening to a pretty average Dave Gahan LP track. So if these songs have a huge personal meaning to him, it doesn't show in the performances of the songs that we have. It's a real shame, because I think a cover versions album, when done well, will stand up as well as anything else in an artist's discography. Imposter just doesn't cut the mustard. It was recorded in 2019 with Soul Savers, and it was released in late 2021, and it was probably delayed by COVID and the inability to do any live stuff to promote it. So at the point where it came out, it had been 4.5 years since there'd last been a studio record that David sung on. And this wasn't worth a 4.5 year wait. So let's go through the songs, and I say bitchy and catty things about them whilst we do so. So the first song is The Dark End of the Street. And The Dark End of the Street, and let's quickly check the writing credits that are on the album. I probably should have checked this more. Was written by, I'm just scrolling through the book now. As you can tell, I do these things without really checking. It says on the inside here, The Dark End of the Street was written by Chips Moman and Dan Penn, whoever they are, recorded by someone called James, and it starts with a C, and I can't read my own writing down there. It doesn't feel like I'm listening to it and going, what is it about this song that is so compelling that someone feels they've got to put it on their covers album? And I can't hear it. I really, really can't. Song 2 is Strange Religion, which is written by Mark Lanigan. God rest his soul, one of the most amazing voices in recorded history. Not perhaps the most accessible or widest. I really think that Mark could have, if he'd managed to live, would have had a fantastic third act as he grew old disgracefully. It would have been absolutely brilliant to hear. He could have been up there with Scott Walker and with Tom Waits, but he didn't make it. He died recently, and that's a great shame. So Strange Religion, as sung by or written by Mark Lanigan, it's a pretty good song, but it's not, again, compelling. We've got Lilac Wine, which is first recorded, or most popularly recorded, by Eartha Kitt and written by James Sheldon. It doesn't mean anything. I'm listening to it and I'm going, I can't see what it is about this song that has compelled Dave to record it. Then there's I Held My Baby Last Night, written by Jules Byhan and Elmore James and recorded by Elmore James. It feels like it's a cover version of an Elmore James song, where actually what they've done is they've just copied the previous instrumentation on the song. It's not an interesting cover version. We've got A Man Needs a Maid by Neil Young. Not so sure that's his best song. Certainly not as good as Piece of Crap. Metal Heart, written by Chan Marshall and recorded by Cat Power, who may be the same person. Shut Me Down, which is a song by Roland Howard. We have Where My Love Lies Asleep, written by Gene Clark. Smile by Charlie Chaplin. If you have the CD single of Michael Jackson performing Charlie Chaplin's Smile, that's worth quite a lot of money, by the way. This version of the song, not very good. We have Not Dark Yet by Bob Dylan, and the last track is Always on My Mind, as covered by Pet Shop Boys in a far superior version. And I think the gap between Always on My Mind by Pet Shop Boys and Always on My Mind by Dave Gahan really just highlights how short the huge shortfall between the Dave Gahan and the Pet Shop Boys version. So for those of you that don't know the Pet Shop Boys version, it's better. Here's the American CD single. Here's the Dave Gahan version, and the American CD single. In fact, the Pet Shop Boys version of Always on My Mind has extra chords in it and extra sections, and it really just sounds like a Pet Shop Boys song that happened to have been written by somebody else. Whereas Always on My Mind, as performed by Dave Gahan, sounds like an Elvis Presley song sung by Dave Gahan. And it's not particularly good. I'm not a fan of cover versions albums. And there's also, on the Metallica Blacklisted album, a 7 CD set of cover versions of songs from Metallica's Black album. Dave performs Metallica's Nothing Else Matters, again, presumably with Soul Savers as his backing band. And it's as unexciting as you might expect, especially considering I think that Nothing Else Matters is very possibly the worst Metallica song. I'm just trying to think of another Metallica song that actually I dislike more than Nothing Else Matters. Possibly We Did It Again off the Swizz Beatz album. That's pretty fucking awful as well. Imposter was toured 5 whole dates, 3 in London, 1 in Berlin, 1 in Paris. A Nation Shrugged. And tickets for the Palladium show in London were something like £260. I got tickets for the Westminster Hall show, which was the album launch, which was £25. I don't think it would have been worth I really don't think it would have been worth £25. I don't think solo Dave Gahan is for me. Obviously, we had 2022, and Fletch, the third member of Depeche Mode, died in May, about a year ago today. And at the time, I did a YouTube episode going, is Depeche Mode over? And my verdict was maybe. Obviously, that's not necessarily the case, because on the 24th of March 2023, they released their 15th studio record, Memento Mori. And I think the reason that Memento Mori exists is if say Fletcher died a month after the last tour. I think that would have been that. But he died as the band were just about to start pre-production and recording for the album. The songs were ready, everything was lined up to go. The band were just about to go into the studio and start working on the records. And I think it would have been a waste if those songs had not been given a voice and an opportunity to come into the world on their own terms. It's a lot of the times it's about timing. For example, when Bill Berry left REM, and that was just at the point where quite a lot of the members of the band had written a number of songs and were ready to go into the studio and were just about to start. And Bill kind of announced on the second day that he thinks it's time that he left the group. If he'd had said the day after the tour, that's it, guys, I'm through, REM would have ended at that point. I think the songs that had been written that were ready to be recorded at the time that Fletcher died were probably the thing that gave Depeche Mode the reason to carry on. As they said on their Instagram post, finding comfort in the things that we know and love. And then they started recording again about 6 weeks after Fletcher's death. So what's different about Memento Mori now that the band are a duo instead of a trio? Well, it's pretty clear that Fletcher's involvement in the group was not in any way musical. There is no way when you listen to this record that you would think the band have just lost a key member. I think his involvement in the group was more strategic. It was more around things like artwork and sequencing and mixing and touring and t-shirts and merchandising and remixes and single releases and coordinating and leading all of that from the inside, as opposed to a guy that pressed buttons on a sequencer and a keyboard on stage, because he really didn't do that very often, as we know. There was a stage tour on the Global Spirit Tour. Peter Gordino was showing the cameraman around the stage, and he referred to, here's where Dave sings, here's where Martin plays, here's where Christian has his drums, this is where Fletch stands. Not where Fletch plays, this is where Fletch stands. And that is pretty much what he did. Is he stood there and pretended to do things when the band were on stage, and in my opinion probably was given more credit than it was worth, actually, because what you can see from the Memento Mori period is the difference in the band by what's no longer present in the group. And what's no longer present in the group is things like single releases, physical singles. The t-shirts on the tour are both expensive and poorly designed. The use of platinum ticket pricing for some of the shows is hostile and offensive. I mean, a face value ticket from Ticketmaster for some of the front row shows in the American tour are like $2,000. And I think there's a separate episode for me to talk about ticket pricing here. But the wanker from Ticketmaster said that buying a concert ticket was like buying a Gucci bag. It's a thing you do every maybe 2 or 3 times a year when you treat yourself. That's firstly grossly insulting to people, suggesting that actually concert tickets are a consumable luxury item like a Gucci bag. A Gucci bag will last you forever. A concert will last you for a night. Okay, it's not the same. It's a false equivalence. The second one is the main people that keep the concert industry afloat are the people that go to see lots and lots of shows, because otherwise artists play to empty fucking rooms. And if you jack up the prices thinking that people will be quite happy to pay the same amount of money and only go to 2 or 3 shows a year, whereas previously they maybe went to 10, or in my case in 1 year I went to 109, you've got to be fucking kidding. It's insulting and it's wrong, and the profit margins are absurdly high. And I'm talking to you, Bruce Springsteen, and you, Depeche Mode, that the ticket prices for this platinum pricing bullshit is too fucking high, and you do not want to piss off your fan base. And the U2 ticket sales at the Sphere have been a catastrophic shit show in the fuck factory. It's been an appalling customer experience. People have paid $1,000 for a platinum ticket at a hotel because that was the only way they could guarantee entry, and then they get an email 6 weeks later saying, oh yeah, and by the way, you've got restricted view, and if you want to change your reservations and your flights and your time off work, you can have a slightly better ticket at, say, the 40th show instead of the first show. even though they knew before the tickets went on sale that there'd be a restricted view, because it's not like somebody walked in one day and just went, guys, there's an overhang here. We're selling these tickets for like $1,000. Have you not thought about this? You know, they knew when they designed the bloody Sphere that some of the seats would have a restricted fucking view, and to then charge them out as platinum seats at $1,000 a throw is obscene, incompetent, inexcusable, and hostile. And when you then have Depeche Mode selling, you know, oh, by the way, here's a ticket in the 5th row in your premier seating, which is $2,000, and it's like, that's too much money. Now, I know that Depeche Mode probably have a full list of demographics that tells you that X% of their fans have X £1,000 of disposable income ready and willing and waiting to be spent on that. But I also know X% of their fans don't have that much money to spend on a show. If someone has said to me, yeah, you can see Depeche Mode for £2,000, and go, look, for £2,000, I want to own them. I want to have them in a box for them to play any fucking song I want, any time I like, for the rest of my life. Because it's not value for money at all. It really, really isn't. So I went to see Depeche Mode in Antwerp on the tour, because they're playing Twickenham Stadium, and I think ticket prices for Twickenham are like £90. They're playing Antwerp, which, by the way, is a quarter of the size of Twickenham Stadium, and Antwerp was €75, which effectively translates at £68. I could get much nearer to the stage. I could have a much better experience. I could also see them a month earlier than if I waited to go and see them in Twickenham, and I could go to Antwerp. I could go to Belgium, which is a lovely country, and it's one of the few countries where I feel at home. So I really like Holland, I really like Belgium, I really like Ireland, and Scotland. Those are like my 4 favourite countries, and none of them, by the way, are the country I live in. If you don't like it, then leave. Well, actually, England's probably number 5 on my list of favourite countries. So I've kind of meandered around the point, really. I should be talking about Depeche Mode's 15th studio album, Memento Mori, here, which I think I'm going to go for now. So the whole thing was written by May 2022. And obviously that was when Fletch died. And I think the last song that was written for the album, I think it might have been Ghosts Again, actually, which is the first one that anybody heard. And then it was recorded between July and November 2022, both at Electric Ladyboy Studios and some other ones, including Dave Gahan's studio in New York. And obviously the first album that was made by the band as a duo. So we have a triple gatefold sleeve here, with a dedication to Andrew John Fletcher. In our Hearts and Minds, Dave and Martin. Hearts and Minds, by the way, is a Nights are Ebb song, undoubtedly chosen for a reason, kind of like a version of Depeche Mode there, using the Anton Corbijn imagery with the skull in the middle. Memento Mori, by the way, is, I think, a Latin phrase, and it means a reminder of both our mortality and our place within the world, which was apparently the title for the LP anyway, which obviously has been brought into sharp relief by the fact that Fletch died last year. And so therefore there could have been no better title for the album than that. We also have a painting by Anton of the remaining group members, pretty clearly Dave and Martin in alphabetical order there on the gatefold. And then we have, in my opinion, probably the most powerful image in the whole of the LP packaging. Dave and Martin there on a New York rooftop with a shadow signifying Fletch, who's both absent and present at the same time. The New York skyline there is the same one that's seen on all the single releases for World in My Eyes, the last single from the Violator album. It's all thematically correct and appropriate. It all ties in and makes sense. And there, Dave, I think, is repeating hand gestures that are inside the World in My Eyes cover artwork. And because I can, I've lent out behind me, there's the World in My Eyes CD single. There's the cover art there. He's making the same hand gesture, although it's a different view of New York. It is obviously New York. There's the bridge that you will see in the poster, and a lot of movies. It's also the bridge that's in the poster for the film Once Upon a Time in America, one of the finer films ever made, of course. And that is the you know, a poignant part of the artwork. When I first saw that photo, I was like, that's one of those photos that you're going to think of and see forever, and you're going to go, that's unforgettable, unforgettably good. You know, if there's an image that encapsulates, I think, probably what the album is about and all its core themes, it's Depeche Mode there, both as a trio and as a duo, marking the absence of Fletch, and recalling and talking back to repeating imagery from a previous album. It's perhaps not quite as blatant as David Bowie slapping text over the cover of his Heroes album and calling it The Next Day, but it's pretty damn stunning. I was like, oh god, that was a perfect photograph, that is, which is of course why the Dutch genius Anton gets the job. So Memento Mori was announced October 2022, but the album wasn't announced, the tour was announced, and you could hear about 30 seconds of some untitled track that everybody thought was called Ghosts Again. And of course, loads of people decided to turn that track, or that 30-second excerpt, and turn it into lots and lots of fan mixes, because what the world needs is yet more fan mixes. And so we have, this is the Amazon exclusive version of the album on clear vinyl. Hello. It's exactly the same as the standard version, but it's on clear vinyl. I figured if I'm going to buy it from somewhere, I might as well buy it from Amazon, because I can. And there's also an etching on the, let me just check the fourth side there, which has the Latin phrase est veri malus. I don't know what that means, I'm sure you can tell me. And an etching of the two wings of one of the angels. And I think the art is perfect, actually, for this record. It's one of the best Depeche Mode LP covers and artworks that we've seen during the band's career. Anton's really nailed it completely with this era. The cover art of the album being two set of what looks like funeral wreath flowers in the shape of angel wings, kind of signifying both an absence and a presence. It's very tasteful, and it works absolutely correctly and rightly in the context of the LP. There are a number of versions of the album that have been released. There are, I think, 3 or 4 different coloured vinyl versions. There's the red vinyl, which you can get from the band's web store. There's the transparent clear vinyl here, which you can get from Amazon. There's a CD, there's a deluxe CD, and then there's your standard vinyl edition as well. This CD, this is the standard CD at the moment. When it went on pre-order, £17.99 for the CD, which is pretty shocking in terms of a cost for a CD. I bought this from a stall at a record fair 4 days after it came out, or no, a week and a day after it came out, for £5, which is a lot more. It was a lot like the price which you would expect. Final editions of this started about £42, which for a 3-sided LP of 12 songs is ridiculous. I've heard that some independent retailers aren't carrying this because of the cost and the risk of people not actually buying it. It's a fucking expensive LP, and that, alongside the cost of the t-shirts and the cost of the tickets, kind of makes me think that I think the band maybe have lost touch with their fan base a little bit, because fans only have so much money, and we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. It's quite arrogant of a band to think that fans would be prepared to pay £2,000 a ticket, or to pay £45 for an LP, or to pay £17 for a standard CD. There is a deluxe edition of the CD, which just has an expanded book inside it with 24 pages in. That was £25. £25 for a 24-page book with a CD in is ridiculous. The relationship between the cost to produce and the cost of sale has become disconnected. The profit margins are very big. And frankly, if I have to think about, well, who needs the £7 more? Is it Depeche Mode or is it me? I'm going to, it's me. I need the £7 more than Depeche Mode, because Depeche Mode have got a load of money, lots of money, tons of money. Everything counts in large amounts. And so what we do have, I mean, the LP, very, very good. I really enjoy this album. It is, I think it's better than Spirit. It's better than Delta Machine. It's probably on a par with Playing the Angel. And Ultra is definitely better than Exciter and Sounds of the Universe. It's one of the best LPs that they've made recently. The best Depeche Mode LP for 18 years. Because if you do an album every 5 years, the best Depeche Mode LP for the past 18 years actually only counts about 3 LPs. But there we are. It starts with the last track to be written for the album, which is called My Cosmos Is Mine. And that was written just before the invasion of the Ukraine in March 2022. It's got some very interesting concepts and themes in it. It's the opening track of the band's current tour. And it's got, all of the lyrics are obsessed with death, with mortality, with being aware of the fact that you're running out of time. As a band, I think, they're in their 60s now, Depeche. If you're going to commit to an album, you're going to commit to a tour, you're looking at it and you're going, if I've only got 30 years left, for example, if I live to 90, and by the way, I think the average age in the UK for a male is about 84. If they're 64, they're then going, right, I've got most 20 years left. And if you're going to ask me to make an album, you're asking me to commit 20% of the rest of my life to a set of songs. Those songs better be good. They better be worth it, because I'm running out of time. And there's a lyric in there very much about the fact that it is a question of time. It's like, don't play with my world, don't play with my mind, don't question my space-time, don't toy with my heart, don't knock down my shrines, don't alter my landlines. And I think a lot of it is around, there's an established reality, and there's a theory that psychology is called consensus reality, the reality that we all believe to be real. And My Cosmos Is Mine, solely written by Martin, is a song that really kind of identifies and goes, effectively, it's almost like Depeche Mode's version of one shot. If you get one shot at this, you get one go at reality. It's my cosmos, it's mine, it's my version of reality. Don't try and bend it or shape it. There are some lyrics which very clearly address the Ukraine conflict, the war between Russia and Ukraine, or depending if you're a Putin apologist, it's a special military operation. But let's not muck about. It's a war, people. It's a war. And there's the bridge of the track is no war, no more, no fear, not here, no rain, no clouds, no pain, no shrouds, no final breaths, no senseless death. And I think what I've got to say is about the songwriting on this and the songwriting that we've got in Ghost Again, is that it's quite simplistic. It takes, I think, some of the melodic, almost nursery rhyme qualities that we had in tracks like Where's the Revolution, and kind of leans into that and extrapolates from that and emphasises that quite considerably. Is it good? I find it a little annoying because it's so simple, it's so basic. The bit where he goes, no war, no war, no war, no war, no more, no more, no more. It's like, well, the train is coming, the train is coming, the train is coming, the engine's coming, the wheels on the bus go round and round and round and round. It's very simple, and I like a little bit more complexity in my songwriting. But the instrumentation and the layering inside the song makes the song work. Still a bit annoying when they play it, but I can live with that. First world problems, isn't it? Track 2 is Wagging Tongues, which apparently, or Wagging Tongue, which will be revealed as the single tomorrow, second single, which is one of the few Garn and Gore co-writes. I think the last time we had one of these was Oh Well on Sounds of the Universe, I think. And this is the second track on the band's set lists as well. It's Dave wrote the guitar. Martin wrote the lyrics and did some of the production. The lyrics were co-written, mostly started as a Martin instrumental, with Dave adding vocals and lyrics to it. Whereas I think My Cosmos Is Mine, being a Martin Gore solo co-write, it has a little bit more personality to it than Wagging Tongue. There is I think, a theme that runs through a number of the songs on the album, about division between humans, about awareness of mortality, about the stakes of mortality that we have around whether this is going to be, what is this reality going to be? Don't play no games with my head, because you're like, that time is short, etc. And we will all be dead, and so on and so forth. They're two really good songs, but they are perhaps indicative of the rest of the LP, which is there are some great songs on here, there's some not so great songs on here. And the third song on here is the first official single from the album, which hasn't had a commercial physical single release. In fact, it had no remixes, no B-sides, nothing like that at all. And until there was a release of a download remix package a couple of weeks ago. Some of the remixes are quite good, by the way, but until the release of that, the only version of Ghosts Again, the first single from the album we had, was the LP mix. There are two 7-inch releases of Ghosts Again. Here is one of them, which was if you are a fan and you live in Germany and you buy Rolling Stone magazine, you would have had a copy of Ghosts Again as a 7-inch single, shrink wrapped to the front of your magazine. There it is. That is one 7-inch of Ghosts Again, only available with Rolling Stone Germany, not to be sold separately, backed with Never Let Me Down Again from the famous TV show Stranger Things. Yeah, this is the 2006 remaster there, getting a vinyl single release for the first time, I think. And then Ghost Again here, the first single from the records, which is a co-write between Martin Gore and Richard Butler of the Psychedelic Furs. I'm not a huge Psychedelic Furs fan, but when you listen to the track, you can kind of hear the influence of an extra writing partner in the group. Probably because Martin's written so many songs on his own, he was like, I quite like the idea of working with somebody else who can help me. This is where I will take my gloves off about the release strategies of some of the material that's come out recently. The idea that Depeche Mode, no, their fans are completists. We're train spotters. We need to have every format in every colour. That's who we are. That's how we live, and that's how we ascribe our self-worth. And unless you live in Germany or you know somebody in Germany who can get a copy of Rolling Stone for you, you're fucked. You can't get this record in your collection. In the same way that there is a second 7-inch of Ghosts Again, which was released on the front cover of Music Express magazine. This time it's a one-sided black vinyl 7-inch and a black cover with an etched disc on the B-side just containing Ghosts Again. And being a record collector shouldn't be this fucking hard to have to know people in Germany who'd be able to go and buy a magazine with a 7-inch single on the front so you can catch them all like fucking Pikachu. It is too bloody difficult to get all of these things, and I'm bored of it. I've got other stuff to worry about in my head than, am I going to get a copy of Rolling Stone that, by the way, some guy I know happened to pick up from Cologne Airport last week because I asked him to do so. No, it shouldn't be that bloody difficult, but it is. It's really annoying. And of course, what's also really annoying is that there is a second, an exclusive Depeche Mode CD on the front of this copy of Mojo magazine, which, by the way, sold out on the morning of publication everywhere apart from the Sainsbury's next to the motorway service station near my house, which means I figured if I was going to ever get a copy of this, I couldn't buy it on the day it came out because I was at work. If I wanted to buy a copy of this, I had to go to the service station next, or more correctly, to the Sainsbury's next to the motorway service station, which is a bloody ridiculous place because generally Depeche Mode fans don't stop off and buy CDs at motorway service stations. This is the CD, Depeche Mode Classics, Rarities and Revelations, which was sold with a copy of Mojo for a very short period of time indeed. This has one previously unreleased Depeche Mode track, the Highline Sessions version of Going Backwards that was only otherwise uploaded to the band's YouTube, alongside remixes of Should Be Higher, Suffer Well, When the Body Speaks, Useless, Barrel of a Gun, Condemnation, I Feel You, Sea of Sin, Enjoy the Silence, Never Let Me Down Again, A Question of Time, Somebody, and Ice Machine. And bearing in mind that the 7-inch mixes of Ice Machine, Somebody, Sea of Sin, I Feel You, Condemnation, and Useless are the versions that are on here. That ain't exactly rarities, guys. Those are bloody obvious songs. And in terms of revelations, what's revelatory about this? Well, there's a remix of Should Be Higher that isn't on any of the remix albums, and there is a session version of Going Backwards. That's it. These are not revelations, but I am a completist. I have to own everything. Need to bring my blood pressure down, so perhaps I shouldn't get annoyed about absolutely everything. So, Memento Mori, Ghosts again, a co-write with Richard Butler, is it's pretty good. It's probably the best single Depeche Mode track off the album. Not my I have a very high opinion of later period Depeche tracks, by the way. So you think about post Allen songs, I think It's No Good, Sister of Night, I Feel Loved, Precious, A Pain That I'm Used to, Suffer Well, Wrong, Should Be Higher, Cover Me, Going Backwards. Brilliant songs, able to stand head and shoulders with anything from the so-called classic period of the band. Ghost again is as good as any Depeche Mode song that's been released. It's a song that very clearly details the concept of mortality, even though it was written before Fletcher's death. The idea, I think, that perhaps basically we're all just ghosts driving meat skeletons. It's probably the idea is we're all going to become ghosts at some point, whether we exist only in someone's mind or whether we, fling cutlery across the room as a poltergeist. Who knows? But that's the kind of the lyrical conception of it. But it's a good, solid song built on a good, solid riff. It's very good. It'll probably won't get played again after the end of the tour, which is a real shame because it is really very good indeed. If I was writing Depeche Mode set lists, I'd have a lot of songs that were a lot newer than most of the songs in their current set list. Track 4 is Don't Say You Love Me. Don't Say You Love Me is, I think it's, let's see who wrote it. So that's Martin and Richard again. It's got this fascinating thing, which actually I think Dave's Imposter album is trying to achieve and doesn't. This sense of it's a song that's been lost from history and was actually written in 1942 as a song for Casablanca, which you just didn't hear. Don't Say You Love Me feels like something out of a film noir soundtrack. It starts with you'll be the killer, I'll be the corpse, you'll be the thriller, and I'll be the drama, of course. And then it kind of goes through a number of iterations of that. It feels like a bit of a Scott Walker song, actually. This huge, sweeping, dark, rich, dense song about drama and loss, and almost like a modern torch song, but also one that addresses the risk of loving somebody, the risk of what happens if I showed you my dark side, would you use it against me? The lyric that's in, the things that you said, about, I showed you my secrets, and if I showed them to you, would you, that type of lyric. It carries on some of the themes that we have in there. And then we have side 2 of Memento Mori, or Moray, or Memento Eel, or whatever it is. Side 2, there's a clear vinyl side 2, is My Favourite Stranger, which the band have played twice so far. It's a song that gets chosen on when they do 2 nights in the same venue or on a French TV appearance. Again, a Gore and Butler co-write. It's fine, I guess. It feels a little bit like it's a song that recognises the inverse of somebody. So if you're a person and you present who you are to the rest of the outside world, there's a version of you that exists, that only exists behind closed doors. There's a version of me that you don't see that's considerably grumpier and bitchier and cattier and hungrier. So basically you wouldn't like me when I'm hangry. But this is a song about the details, that kind of experiences. That's the side of me which still exists, which perhaps I don't necessarily show to people unless I trust them or love them. Again, something that ties in with, I think, some of the lyrical conceptions that run inside Don't Say That You Love Me, the idea of showing your secret self, who you really are, the shadow, the inverse, like the devil on your shoulder, or the angel that's kind of trying to talk to you around, you could do this. It'd be really bad, but you could do it. And about, the fragility and the finality that comes with that. and also the concept of mortality. We are only judged upon who we are and what we do during the course of our lives, and therefore don't go being a twat now, as Paddy Considine said in Hot Fuzz. Another rare chance to see it on ITV, undoubtedly sometime this week. It seems to also be influenced musically by the band Suicide, which also a duo from the 70s in New York. I saw them supporting the Stooges in 2010. But for some reason, reminded me of a really angry, dark version of Soft Cell, or perhaps Soft Cell, kind of like a lighter, fluffier version of Suicide, which is in fact possible. Track 6 is Soul With Me, the Martin Gore solo, right? And it's not. I think it's the first. I think it's a Martin vocal as well. I can't really remember, to be honest. Let me just quickly check the set lists. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a Martin vocal. I don't like Soul With Me. Although it's influenced by Pet Sounds, it's influenced by Kurt Weill. You can really hear the influence of Kurt Weill on Soul With Me. It's a kind of a gospel song, and very clearly leans into discussing mortality, but it's kind of very dull, a lyric. So, for example, the final or the penultimate verse is, I'm ready for the final pages, kiss goodbye to all my earthly cages, I'm climbing up the golden stairs. That's a very, very basic lyric structure of A, basically, because you've got stairs and stages, and you've got cages as well, and it's just boring. I mean, as a kind of a lyric, it's unsophisticated, banal, even in its melodic strengths. I'd rather have Martin sing a different song at the shows. Glad I saw him do it, but I don't understand why it gets played at every show. Track 7 is Caroline's Monkey. That is considerably better. Caroline's Monkey, track 3, side 2. And it's a song that's talking about having a compulsive personality. Caroline's Monkey being that metaphor for having a monkey on your back that won't quit, and the idea that they will whisper in your ear and they will force you to do things. It's just one line, just chop it out, just try it, it'll be fine. And from some people, when they have addictive personalities, I have an addictive personality, I know that. If I see a band, I want to see all the shows. If I like a band's records, I want all the records. If I'm in a pub and I can have a drink, I want all the drinks. I want everything. I want to go as far as I can go with my indulgences. And Caroline's Monkey is a song that seems to be talking about addiction and having a compulsive personality, and the idea of denying who you are versus overdoing it. Kevin Smith, the American filmmaker, in his documentary interview DVD, Kevin Smith Evening Harder, I believe it was called, he was talking about Jason Mewes, who is in the Jay and Silent Bob films, and he was going, what if the person that he really is an addict, and by us trying to intervene in that, we're actually stopping him being who he is? So some of the things in these songs, they're kind of like questions and discussions around what is the nature of a personality and who somebody is and what somebody is going to be, is who they are. Is that an addict? Is that someone who's compulsive? Is that somebody who has impulse control? Is that somebody that can't say no to certain situations? I think it's a great song, and if I was in charge of the set lists, I'd put that into the set lists. Track 8, last track on side 2, Before We Drown, is a Garn, Peter Gordino and Christian Eigner co-write. There are 2 Depeche modes. There's the version that records in the studio, there's the version that plays live. And the only times that those parts really interact is that Christian and Peter sometimes write songs with Dave. I don't think that they appear on many of the records. If they do, it's really only in a guest capacity, which, given that they're part of the live band, I do wish that they played on more of the records. So I think what Depeche Mode haven't been able to do yet is to capture the power of their live lineups in a studio recording, at least not since 1997. They haven't done it since then. And I would love to get Peter and Christian as part of Depeche Mode's studio setup in future. Before We Drown is a very good song. It's a song that details the idea about forward motion. Is all forward motion positive? Is all forward motion correct? Are some upgrades really just changes that make things worse? That's the type of thing that Before We Drown is really kind of addressing, and it does so, I think, in an articulate and meaningful way. So we have the album. I need to go over to side 3 now, away from side 1, which means I need to improvise slightly. Track 9, or track 1, side 3, depending on your point of view, is called People Are Good. I love the conceit of an idea of a song called People Are Good by Depeche Mode, because obviously they had another single, I will sing it on the radio for free tickets, is People Are People, so why should it be we should treat each other so awfully? And then the side then about, I don't know, 11 albums and 40 years later, you go, actually, people are good. They don't treat each other so awfully. People are good. It's, I think, a fun, silly concept. But there's also, I mean, as I mentioned before, there's some kind of thoughts around self-denial and self-deception. So, for example, when I was mentioning about Before We Drown, about the nature of addiction and compulsion, People Are Good also has that. People are good. Keep fooling yourself. Keep telling yourself that people are good, and maybe they will get to reward that. We then also have Always You and Never Let Me Go, both of which are songs I don't have a huge amount to talk about. And then Speak to Me, the last track on the album, track 12, which is played live pretty much every show of the tour, as the song that's pretty much the midpoint of the main set, that kind of specifies or outlines just before Martin does his solo turn. And Speak to Me is it's a Dave Christian and James Ford co-write that really reminds me of Cover Me as well, because Dave also wrote Cover Me on the Spirit album, which in retrospect isn't exactly the best one ever. I think Speak to Me is around being true to yourself, around following your heart and your mind and your soul when you have a spiritual crisis, and then talking about, is there something more than this physical world that we live in? The whole of Memento Mori as an album seems to be obsessed with, or focusing on, I think, what I call hypermortality, an awareness of mortality and death, and the fact that we're running out of time on this feeble planet. It's a great album, actually. What it does feel, and this is what I felt when I saw them in Antwerp on Saturday, is that Depeche Mode feel that they perhaps may have got a little bit complacent during the previous albums, that they could do this all day, as Captain America said, and that they took it for granted, whereas Memento Mori really feels like they really value what they have now, and they feel to really appreciate what they have in a way that perhaps they didn't previously. So I saw the tour on Saturday night in Antwerp. The first thing I will say is it was one of the best Depeche shows I've seen. Not because Fletcher wasn't there, but because the band feel revitalised. It feels like they really appreciate it, and that they know that you can't just keep on doing it forever because Andy died. And maybe the idea is they'd just carry on forever with Andy, and they'd do an album every 4 years, and they'd always sell out a stadium, and everything would be fine. And then all of a sudden they found that wasn't how things were going to be. Things could turn out to be very different indeed. And that you shouldn't take it for granted. You shouldn't go, you can go to an arena or a stadium every 4 years and make a few million quid, and it's going to be easy, and you can just churn out any old rubbish. The band feel like they're a little bit more revitalised by the knowledge that they have around what they could have lost, because they could have lost everything. They could have not had they could have not had they could have stopped. They came really close to losing it, or really close to it coming to an end, because there was no guarantee when Andy left or Andy died that they would carry on. You sometimes you need a moment that wakes you up a little bit to your complacency, and to go, that is this really what you want? Because you're going to spend the next 3 years doing this, and if the only thing you get out of it is money, you can't get more time. is that what you want to be doing? The t-shirts were too expensive. The t-shirts were between €50 and €90 for a hoodie, and they didn't look €50 worth of t-shirt at all. So I didn't buy a Depeche Mode t-shirt. It's the first time on a tour I've not bought a Depeche Mode t-shirt, simply because they're expensive and they're a rip-off, and I have enough band t-shirts anyway, as you can probably work out. Again, this and the thing around the ticket pricing really feels that and the price of the the LP and the CD, and the difficulty in getting a 7-inch single really feels like Depeche are starting to, perhaps they need to keep their feet on the ground a little bit, which they don't necessarily always do when they look at things like ticket pricing. €50 for a t-shirt is fudging ridiculous, and it needs to be cheaper. The show was very, very good though. The band felt revitalized. The set list had a number of the later period songs that they don't play that often. So, for example, John the Revelator was back in the set. A Pain That I'm Used To, Wrong was in there. Precious, of course, was in there. The reliance on songs from the 90s wasn't really there. So Policy of Truth wasn't in the set list. Barrel of a Gun wasn't in the set list. Home has a rotating point in the set list now, as opposed to being played at every show. Useless is not been played so far on the tour. Behind the Wheel hasn't been played. Strange Love, A Question of Time, for example. Although from the 80s you did get Just Can't Get Enough, Everything Counts, Stripped, A Question of Lust, and Never Let Me Down Again. And on those songs, what I will say is I think Everything Counts, by the way, has a fantastic video in which the lyrics are interpreted. I hate to use the phrase interpretive dance, but I think that's what happens through British Sign Language, and are presented in a very interesting way. And also there's a video that goes alongside It's No Good, which is donkeys on a beach in Holland or the Netherlands. I think it's the same beach that U2 used for their Joshua Tree 2017 tour photographs. I could be wrong, but I think it's the same beach. It certainly looks like it. And since Anton shot both of them, maybe those are the same tricks. The show was really, really good. I do not hesitate in recommending you going to see Depeche on the tour. What I will suggest is, if you are going to go and see Depeche on the tour, go for the indoor arena shows. Don't go for the stadium shows. They will come back to do arenas, undoubtedly, in some parts of the world. And I think Depeche Mode work better in arenas than they do in football stadiums. And I prefer them in smaller places. That's my bottom line, really. But it really felt like the band were reborn and revitalized by their loss. It's made them appreciate what they've had for so long. There was a sense of complacency on some of the previous tours that, we won't play that song because we'll play it next time round. We'll come round in 4 years. There's a realization now there might not be a 4 years from now when the band are still touring. They might end sooner than that. So to make the most of it whilst they can. And it ties in with the themes of the album, the awareness of death, the awareness of mortality, the fact that you've got to make everything count, and everything counts in large amounts, which makes Memento Mori one of my favourite Depeche Mode albums. It's the best one since playing The Angel. I'm really, really pleased that we have it. I love it. I recommend it highly to you. And there we are. So thank you for spending 64 minutes or so listening to me monologue about this record, which is actually longer than the record itself, which is pretty surprising. But there you are. If I'm wrong about something, don't hesitate to tell me in the comments, because that's how YouTube and the internet works. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other. As the late, great Jerry Springer would have said, stay beautiful, and I will see you soon. Okay. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.